Hello there, folks, and happy October. It is officially Halloween season. I know for a lot of us, Halloween season sort of begins with September, but I'm only going to start doing Halloween stuff starting in October because, well, I just didn't want to do 8 weeks of Halloween-themed speed paints. I just don't know if I would have had that many ideas to do. So for the month of October, I'm going to be doing some spooky-themed speed paints. And this week we're going to be drawing some Halloween-themed shiny Pokémon in some very fun digital illustrations. I thought this would be a nice, simple way to get the month started, set the mood, and I really wanted to do some unconventional picks for Halloween. I didn't just want to go with the very obvious Ghost-type Pokémon. In fact, there aren't actually any Ghost types in this video. I'll save Ghost-type stuff for another time. So, without further ado, happy October, and let's get started with the speed paint. Our first Halloween shiny is an old favorite of mine. It's Darkrai. Darkrai has such a great shiny, and unfortunately the way I ended up shading this piece really makes it hard to tell that it is a shiny one, but I promise it is. While these colors are a little bit more subtle compared to more bombastic shinies in the series, I think that purple, green, and pink thing that shiny Darkrai has going on is super stylish and very cool. I just love how high contrast it is. Not to say that default Darkrai isn't very high contrast, but I love the vivid colors and I just think they're so cool. For this illustration, I went with a nice landscape thing, and I wanted to do a nice full scene, included with a background and everything. The first thing I did was sketch out the rough composition. I put down where Darkrai would be. First, I wanted to have it looking over its shoulder, kind of ominously. I thought that would suit the Halloween vibe. I really wanted its silhouette to have every sort of smoky tendril of its body going out, not overlapping, but still flowing around to make a nice distinct silhouette. I also wanted there to be a lot of trees. I really wanted to give this vibe like a clearing in a dark forest. And I wanted to have a huge full moon right there, which I know is a little ironic. Darkrai is the new moon sort of Pokemon and not the full moon, but I thought it would really help give some gravity into this composition, and I thought it would look nice, so I went around with the full moon. Plus it made for a really convenient light source later down the line. And in the foreground I have a few flowering bushes to give a little bit more depth to this piece. I started out by just putting in the lines and flats for Darkrai, nice and easy, standard fare stuff I would do for most character art. Next thing I did was take care of the sky and the moon was a lot of fun to do. So if you aren't already aware, the moon has a lot of texture on it. I mean, if you just look at it, you'll probably notice. But I think a lot of people mistakenly think that the dark spots are craters and that the light spot is not. It's actually the other way around. All the craters on the moon are actually those light bits, but they're just so densely put together that it looks bright. So even though we think of craters as being like a dark blotch, it's actually the light bits that are the craters. In fact, the dark parts are, I believe, old molten rock that solidified a long time ago, when the moon was still a little active on the inside. Different crater impacts caused it to open up, and essentially, I guess, this is gonna sound a little gross, but they're kind of like scabs, almost just building up on top of the moon. So it's actually the flat surface that is dark and the bumpy surface that is bright white. So I kind of wanted to embrace that vibe, even though I wanted it to be a little ambiguous looking, because I think from the distance we are on Earth looking at the moon, it's a little hard to tell when you're just looking with the naked eye where the craters are versus where those like lava fields essentially are. And I think it came out pretty cool. I just love how textured it came out, and it really captures the feeling I get when I look at the moon at night. I put a lot of trees in here, a lot of nice, big, coniferous trees. Again, using the Devin Kurtz brush packs because I love them and they're awesome. And I really want to capture the vibe. I live in New Jersey, so I'm very familiar with the Pine Barrens area. I really want to capture the vibe of like driving through the Pine Barrens late at night and seeing the silhouettes of the trees. And I thought that would make for a fun, eerie vibe. I also went with a nice, soft, grassy brush, another Devin Kurtz brush, of course, to sort of block in where the ground is going to be very loosely. I try to use it a little bit more gently towards the back to imply that the grass blades are a little further away, and a little bit more pressure up front to make it a little bigger to give that sense of depth, even if it's a little subtle. And of course, I went ahead and put some bushes in the front to give that depth like I talked about earlier. Then came the rendering. Obviously, I'm using that big bright full moon as my light source, so obviously all the lighting in this picture is going to be coming from that. First, I shaded the background. I worked on the plants and the grass and the trees first, giving it a nice pink, almost orange light. And I actually went with shading Darkrai for last. I really wanted to give it a nice dramatic rim shade that would be enough to pull it out from the silhouette of the forest, without making it stand out so much that it loses that eerie vibe. I also made its eye seem to glow so it sticks out from the silhouette as well, since I thought that would be fun, dramatic, and spooky. The thing about the plant brushes I used for the front is that on their own without shading, they can look very obviously stampy and a little dull, but if you treat them with a little bit of rendering, just a nice highlight and shadow, honestly, it makes it look way more hand-drawn, even though I know those are basically stamp brushes or repeating pattern brushes. Yet treating these things the right way when you shade them can make them a little more believable. After all, plants in real life do have leaves that are very similarly shaped all throughout the same plant. So if you treat it correctly in the render, it can really increase the believability and make it look a little less like forced or artificial. Overall, even though this is a pretty simple piece, I'm very happy with it. I thought it was a lot of fun to do. It was just a nice self-indulgent sort of pink and purple landscape. I'm going to be using these colors for the rest of the illustrations too, just because that's the sort of mood I was in when I was working on them. I hope you guys enjoy how this one came out as much as I enjoyed making it. Next up we have Hatterene. Now I feel like Hatterene's not the most obvious Halloween choice. I feel like a lot of people see a pastel Pokemon that's not a ghost type and don't immediately associate it with Halloween, but I mean, come on. She's a witch that lives in the woods, that'll kill you if you have too many feelings. The fact that in the lore there's this sort of implication that, like, the Grimmsnarl line is basically the minions of the Hatterene line, so she's like an evil witch with little goblin minions, like, of course she's Halloween themed, right? I thought that would be a lot of fun, and I haven't drawn Hatterene in a really long time, and the last time I did, I'm pretty sure it was a fusion with another Pokemon anyway. So I thought this would be a fun excuse to draw a very different body type than I usually do, and to just have fun blending those colors and the gradient across its body, and to do a nice, simple, very graphic sort of illustration. I based the pose very much inspired on the official art, but I gave it a slightly different head tilt to give it a little more motion with the arm tendril to make it really look like it's reaching it out toward the viewer a little bit more rather than just passively hanging. It was a lot of fun to do these shapes. I just love drawing big curves, and really this entire character design is just full of fun to draw hourglassy curves. And I also just love the design for Hatterene as well. I love that it's actually just a little creature under there, and the rest of it is just hair, so I really wanted to, in my sketch, make sure I knew where it was, so I'd make sure I'm actually believably covering the creature inside, and not just, like, drawing the neck haphazardly. I just think it's so funny when people draw, like, not safe for work type stuff of this design, when it's, like, the actual Pokemon under there is literally a stick person, and it's all hair. Like, everyone's trying to draw hair in, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like a slutty way. I just think that's just so funny for this character design, especially for this Pokemon that, if it sensed you feeling that way, would probably attack and maul you to death. So, I just think that's a lot of fun. I put this nice little lace effect in the background to sort of make it feel a little bit more elegant, and my family, we like to go all out and decorate a lot inside the house for Halloween, and I always associate these, like, spider web inspired tablecloths we have with the Halloween season, so for some reason I really associate lace with Halloween, even though I'm pretty sure I'm the only person who does that. So I went with that since it suits Hatterene's vibe. It was a great little thing to add a little noise to the composition. And of course, I can never resist the urge to just add a god-dang shape in the background to balance out the composition and negative space. I just love doing it. It's always really fun, and it always looks really good, so here's another big fat circle for another Halloween composition. I'm pretty happy with how this piece came out, and I hope you guys enjoy it as well. Last but not least, we have Midnight Lycanroc. If you didn't know that I was doing Lycanroc, you would probably be surprised to see that I'm including a rock type on this list of Halloween shinies, but I mean, come on, look at this guy. Lycanroc just oozes that Halloween vibe, especially the Midnight form. I feel like a lot of the fanbase prefers the Midday or the Dusk forms because they're a little bit more dog-like, which is fair, they're really good designs. But I really love what they're going for in Midnight Lycanroc. I love its terrible hunched over posture. I love how lanky and awkward it is. I love the way that it kind of squats. It's just so fun. It's such a cool classic werewolf design, and I just think it's such a neat little concept. Plus I love those big red eyes that it has to really make itself seem more menacing, and I just thought it would be a fun Halloween Pokemon. For the pose for this, it was pretty tricky. I was trying to balance a pose somewhere between the official art and the back sprites for it. I wanted it to be facing away from the viewer, but then turn its head over its shoulder kind of menacingly, like it just noticed you're there and is being ominous. But I kept looking at this pose, like trying to get those legs. It was really tricky for me to get my mind around something that would look like it's squatting, but not look too much like, I don't know. Am I picturing the right album cover? The Anaconda album cover? You know that one? We all know that one with the butt. Yeah, I didn't really want it to look like it was showing off its butt too much, because that's just not the tone I was going for in this piece. I really just wanted it to feel like it was just standing there and not like showing off that booty. Obviously, people probably do art like that for this Lycanroc, but that wasn't really what I was going for in this piece, so it took me a little bit to really hone down the pose in a way that felt more like a feral guy than like someone showing off their butt. Eventually, I managed to get the feet down, those long, big feet that dogs and other like quadrupeds have compared to humans where they walk on their tiptoes. I think really nailing how I wanted to pose those brought the rest of the pose together as well. It was a lot of fun drawing all those big floofy bits like the mane and the tail. It was such a fun way to draw curvy shapes and really increase that silhouette. I had fun with that snarky face with that little smile and the evil looking eyes. This is just a fun design, and even though the pose gave me a bit of trouble, this was actually a pretty easy Pokemon to draw. And of course, just like I did with Darkrai, I did another nice big full moon, although this one's not nearly as textural as the one I did in the Darkrai piece. After all, it's gonna be right behind the Lycanroc, and I really wanted it to be less noisy, so that way Lycanroc, who's directly in front of it, doesn't, like, get distracted by all the noise going on in the moon. I also made it more pink or reddish in color to sort of imply the idea of a lunar eclipse, so that way it would look a little more dramatic and also set it apart from the Darkrai piece as well. Plus I thought it would match the eyes for Midnight Lycanroc, who has these pink reddish eyes. I thought it'd be fun for the eyes and moon to sort of be the same color. For the background of this one, it's a lot more simple than the Darkrai piece was. There's not as many layers of stuff, but there is grass, there's pine trees, and a nice little dramatic shadow at Lycanroc's feet. And for this one, I did something that I didn't do in the other pieces, which is hand-drawn highlights. Or rather, like those white highlights. Obviously, I was using highlight in terms of shading in my other pieces, but this one was the first time in a while that I actually went in and drew white highlights in. I like to do this in a lot of my pieces because I think it adds like this fun, glossy feel and adds a lot of dramatic light to a piece. But sometimes it can make it a little too busy, I found, so I only really use it if I feel like it needs it. And I thought it would be very nice to add a little bit more of that rim light effect with the moon behind the body. And I just thought it would give this thing another reason to be different from the other two pieces in this speed paint. Overall, I had a lot of fun with this piece. It was just a ton of fun to do. The process was a lot of fun, doing that dramatic lighting, the glowing eye, the highlights, the moon, everything about it, just a nice, classic thing. Everything about this piece really reminded me why I like drawing nighttime scenes and why I like drawing big moons and stuff. So it was a lot of fun, even if the beginning gave me a little trouble. And that's all I've got for you guys today. Did you guys have a favorite piece that I did? For me? I don't know. I really like all three of them quite a lot. But, I mean, I did use Lycanroc in the thumbnail, so I am really happy with how that composition came out, even if it gave me a little trouble at the beginning. So I'm pretty happy with all of them, though. I think they all have this nice cohesive color palette, but they all have totally different vibes. And I also had a lot of fun trying to pick the Pokemon for this without going with choices that felt too obvious. So I feel like I came up with fitting Pokemon that also weren't low-hanging fruit. If you would like to support me, I recommend checking out my Ko-fi page. It's the best way you can support me right now, and I'm saving up because eventually me and my girlfriend are going to move, but we don't have a deadline for that yet, so it's not urgent, but I've been saving. Pretty much everything I make doing art goes directly into my savings, so it'll help us get a house down the line, it'll help me pay off my student debt, so anything you guys can do, I would really appreciate it. And with that, that is all I've got for you guys today. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you again next week with another Halloween-inspired speed paint. And in the meantime, go out there and make some art.